back to our study as we read through the scriptures in 1 year. And our reading brings us to Numbers 34 through Deuteronomy 13. Now we're coming to the end of the book of Numbers. And remember, we're following this new generation as they prepare to enter into the promised land. And here's what I want you to be looking for. The promised land will be divided up between the tribes. And it's going to be worked out with the Levites. They're not going to receive any of the land, but they're going to be given cities within all the different portions of the land, because it's going to be the Levites who will be ministering spiritually to all of Israel within their divided lands. So the Levites do not receive a land for themselves, but they are basically servants in all the different proportioned land. Now there's going to be a provision of mercy for those who take the life of someone. That is, if it was an accident. Remember very clearly in the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, if you choose to murder somebody, to destroy someone who bears the image of God, then you are to forfeit your life, or your life is to be forfeited. But what if it's an accident? And so you're going to read about the provisions, quite interesting, of cities of refuge. That there is a provision that if you killed somebody you didn't mean to, it was the responsibility of the brother or family of that person to come kill you in that culture, and you had a way to escape. And if you could get to one of these cities of refuge, then they could not enter in and touch you. Now, before moving into the next book, clarification is made about the inheritance, about marriage. In other words, who gets what when the parents die, so there would not be a lot of fighting over this. Now we move into the book of Deuteronomy. Now some have called the book of Deuteronomy the book of redo or do-over, but it really is a redo. This has been called Moses' Upper Desert Discourses. It really consists of 3 farewell messages by Moses. At this time Moses is 120 years of age, and he reminds the new generation of the importance of obedience and to learn by the bad example of their parents, that is, their predecessors, those that went before. Moses moves from the past, talks about Israel's history, to the present, Israel's holiness and homeland, and then he is going to talk about their future, Israel's new leader, Joshua. The message addresses this new generation destined to possess the land of promise, and these are the ones who survived as the kids who grew up during the 40 years in the wilderness. Because of the unbelief of their parents, they suffered, but not really, because they'll be the new generation, and they'll be the ones who will be faithful and enter into the inheritance. Well, like Leviticus, Deuteronomy contains a vast amount of legal details, so get those paddles out, for you're going to have to do a little bit of paddling here, but you're used to that by now. But the emphasis here is that the people in general, rather than the priests. In Leviticus, those details had to do with the priests. In Deuteronomy, these details have to do with each individual Israelite. So it's more practical for us. Now Moses is going to remind this new generation of the importance of obedience. If they expect God's blessing upon them, the theme of this book is basically beware lest you forget. Beware lest you forget. We basically keep forgetting God's faithfulness and his blessings, and then we stumble again and again. And this is what he's going to remind them of. Now, these first 4 chapters, Moses is going to review what God has done, just to remind them. And then in the next section, chapters 5 to 26, what God expects from them as a holy people, since he's holy. And in chapters 27 to 34, what God's actually going to do. Now, remember something, the 10 Commandments are repeated here in chapter 5 for a second time. And they're repeated because he re-emphasizes this is the very core, the beginning of the moral heart of God himself and what he expects in obedience to himself. If there's going to be success, that is. Now, you see God's gracious dealings with his people until they provoke him to discipline. You'll see God blessing, and then the people stiff-necked will forget the blessing, rebel, be indifferent, unbelief, and then he disciplines them like any loving father would. Moses explains how those original 2 tablets that were destroyed, Well, by Moses, how they were rewritten. If you ever wondered, well, if Moses destroyed the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets, how come we still have them today and we know what they were? Because they were rewritten. But I think this is kind of a fun section because God was the one who engraved the first giving of the 10 Commandments. These, God does it a different way, and you'll read about that. Then he will speak about the sanctuary one more time. This will be the meeting place of the presence of God and his people. And he wants to tell them how it is to be treated with holiness. And so then he ends really this book with strong warnings against idolatry. And remember, like A.W. Tozer said, the essence of idolatry is to entertain thoughts about God which are unworthy of him. Like people say, God created man in his own image, and we have been returning the favor ever since. You know, the essence of humility is simply this: God is God, and we're not. And yet we are his children. 2 Corinthians 6, I'll be a father to you, you'll be sons and daughters to me. And so his desires for his children to reflect him. He's holy. He wants his children to be holy. And remember what holiness means? Different from, separated from. So the world will see that there is another way, the way God created us to be in the first place. Well, we'll continue our reading and our study, and we'll pick it up next week. Stay faithful. Remember, study. Show thyself a workman and need not be ashamed of himself, rightly dividing the word of truth. God bless you.